question of who is pulling the strings.
So Piers Morgan just called out something critical about foreign influence over American war decisions, and it's explosive. This is about Netanyahu's unprecedented role in pushing Trump into the Iran conflict and the political disaster that followed. Let's break down how Israeli pressure campaigns actually work.
And the crux of it is that after a number of different aspirations that were espoused by the Americans at the start of the war, including regime change and so on, they seem to have centered now the Trump administration on we have to stop Iran developing a nuclear weapon as the purpose for the war, which means that the victory can only be achieved if that is established. And you can only establish that, it seems to me, if you can be seen to have provably destroyed or have surrendered Iran's enriched uranium. If you don't get that result, I don't see how you can claim to have stopped them developing a nuclear weapon should they seek to do so.
Shifting war goals mid-conflict is a classic sign of strategic failure. The nuclear objective is virtually impossible. Iran's enrichment facilities are dispersed and hardened. This goal change suggests the original justifications collapsed, leaving Trump searching for any achievable victory condition.
Do you think the Americans have underestimated in a massive way the Iranian ability to control the Strait of Hormuz and their willingness to attack the Gulf state neighbors? Because it seems to me the double-pronged way they've gone about both of those things has been a very effective response to the military attack, in which they clearly faced overwhelming military superiority from the Americans and Israelis.
The Strait of Hormuz carries 20% of global oil. That's why Iran's chokehold works. They're using classic asymmetric warfare, accepting military losses to inflict economic pain. Iran studied how North Vietnam outlasted superior American firepower through strategic patience.
In terms of the economic and political issues for President Trump now, which he'll be weighing up, they talk about the economic damage that the blockade, for example, is causing the Iranians, but it's also, of course, causing, the longer the Strait of Hormuz remains pretty well closed, massive economic issues, not just for America, but for everyone that uses that strait. But the political damage of the rising gas prices, rising energy prices generally, also the more slow-burning rise in food prices because the fertilizer couldn't get through either. All this is politically very toxic for Donald Trump, isn't it? I mean, the polling already shows his approval rating hitting new lows. The number of Americans that oppose this war is rising. Those two numbers will only get worse for him as this goes on. And then he's got the midterms coming in November. What do you feel about the political fallout from this?
Gas prices decide elections. Carter lost in 1980 partly over energy costs. Every 10-cent increase costs Republicans roughly 1 approval point. With 2026 midterms approaching, sustained high energy prices could flip both chambers to Democrats, crippling Trump's agenda.
I also think that for all the bellicose rhetoric he has about we're going to take out all the power plants in Iran and so on and so on, the truth about that, the cold hard reality, is that Iran still maintains a huge number of ballistic missiles, and they could easily attack, as they've already shown a propensity to do, the oil refineries of the Gulf state neighbors. And they could go further, and if their own desalination plants get taken out in Iran, they could do the same to the Middle Eastern Gulf state neighbors. And if they did that, they could basically stop water supply in some of those states. I mean, it could be really incredibly serious, almost borderline apocalyptic for the people in those countries.
Iran possesses over 3,000 ballistic missiles, many precision-guided. The Gulf states depend on desalination for 80% of their water. Saudi Arabia produces 4 billion liters daily from plants. One coordinated Iranian strike could create a humanitarian catastrophe affecting 30 million people.
I just think Donald Trump should get out of this as best he can, as fast as he possibly can. I see no longer-term way that this doesn't get a lot worse.
Foreign policy experts privately call this unwinnable. Iran's proven they can endure military punishment while strangling global commerce. Trump faces the classic sunk cost dilemma: escalate risking broader war, or withdraw admitting strategic failure before midterms. Neither option polls well.
But Alan, I would say, I just don't think that's right when it comes to the Iran war, because we know from the big New York Times deep dive last week that Benjamin Netanyahu, on his 7th or 8th trip to the White House in a matter of months, sat in the Situation Room at the White House with the head of Mossad joining on the big screen. and sold Donald Trump the idea that there was a chance to decapitate the leadership in Iran, and that as a result, the IRGC would collapse from within, the people would rise up, and they'd all be too distracted to even think about the Strait of Hormuz.
That New York Times investigation revealed Netanyahu made 8 White House visits in 4 months, unprecedented access for any foreign leader. Having Mossad chief virtually attend National Security Council meetings represents Israeli intelligence directly shaping American war planning. That's extraordinary influence.
And he said to us clearly on camera that America preemptively struck in Iran because Israel had told them that they were going to attack Iran, and they knew that if that happened, Iran would attack American interests. So they got in first.
Rubio's admission is stunning. America launched preemptive war because Israel threatened unilateral action. That's not alliance coordination, that's policy dictation. No previous administration has allowed foreign governments to essentially force American military commitments through ultimatums. This breaks constitutional precedent.
One of the reasons I think that Israel's been getting increasingly unpopular is because anyone that dares to criticize the Israeli government, and I stand by my suggestion that Benjamin Netanyahu has been pulling some strings with Trump because he managed to persuade the fourth American president. Well, let me finish my point. And I think I should be allowed to use that phrase. I should be allowed to use that phrase without you calling me anti-Semitic.
There's a crucial distinction here. Criticizing Netanyahu's government isn't anti-Semitic, it's basic political analysis. He's worked with 4 presidents across both parties, using identical pressure tactics. Examining foreign political influence over American decisions is legitimate democratic discourse, not prejudice.
You know, I do believe that there's been enormous pressure, Joe Kent, from Benjamin Netanyahu to literally try and dictate what America would do. And I think he did it. He tried to do it with Obama. He tried to do it with Joe Biden, and he failed. We know that from Antony Blinken, who told us that he tried. And both times the American president said, I'm not coming with you if you attack Iran. And Israel did not attack Iran in either eventuality. So we know that here he found a president that would go along with it. And it's turned into, I think, a bit of a disaster here.
Blinken confirmed Netanyahu pressured Obama and Biden for Iran strikes. Both refused. Israel backed down. That pattern proves presidential resolve matters. Trump's willingness to comply represents a fundamental departure from bipartisan precedent of maintaining American decision-making independence in war powers.
I mean, what was clear from the New York Times piece, whichever phraseology you want to use, the reality is that the Israelis in that meeting in the White House Situation Room presented a series of events to Trump, which many of Trump's own people highly disputed. In fact, some of them found it ridiculous. But they presented a sequence of events which simply hasn't materialized. So however we want to categorize it or describe what happened, Alan, the truth is that Trump went all in on the Israeli playbook for what would happen if they attacked the leadership in Iran and what would then follow.
The intelligence dispute was remarkable. American analysts called Israeli predictions unrealistic, yet Trump sided with foreign assessments over his own experts. The promised Iranian regime collapse never materialized. Classic case of policymakers believing convenient intelligence over professional analysis.
But Iran could come out of this more radicalized, more battle-hardened, more emboldened because they now know they can control the Strait of Hormuz in a way that paralyzes the global economy, and they can put all the Gulf states on notice that they can destroy their business model in a heartbeat if they want to.
Iran's gained strategic knowledge worth decades of planning. They've proven they can paralyze global energy markets and threaten Gulf state survival. This conflict inadvertently taught them exactly how much economic leverage they possess. They'll remember these lessons long after any ceasefire.
It's been quite interesting to watch J.D. Vance and Rubio kind of trying to sit out this war in terms of any too much public pronouncements about it. Almost like they know this could become a real sword of Damocles for the Republican candidate in 2028. Is that your sense about what's going on here?
Vance and Rubio's silence speaks volumes. Potential 2028 candidates avoiding association with Trump's war shows its political toxicity. They're calculating that defending this conflict could sink future campaigns. When ambitious politicians stay quiet, that signals real electoral danger ahead.
The approval rating is crashing, and the
We have to change that. That's why I joined the Republican Party, to help that.
Well, maybe they'll see you as the unlikely savior of the Republican Party, Alan, which would be most entertaining.
Trump's approval has dropped 12 points since the war began. That's Carter-level decline territory. The 2026 midterms will be a referendum on this conflict. If Republicans lose decisively, it'll prove American voters rejected foreign-influenced war decisions. History's watching these numbers.